Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and I welcome you all to the KB Radio Network. Thank you all for joining me on today's show. You could be anywhere else in the world, but you're here with me, and I greatly appreciate it. For those who are new to the show, Movie Goodness is where we take a topic, we discuss that topic, and we review a movie that is related to said topic. And today's a tad bit different. We do have a topic to talk about, and we do have a review that coordinates with that topic, but it's not a movie. It is the HBO comedy drama television show The Righteous Gemstones, which is just one of the most hilarious shows on television. And it wrapped up its four. It's 4 seasons on HBO. It ran from 2019 to 2025, and it just wrapped up this past week on HBO. And I really enjoyed that show. Yeah, I have some problems with it, but we'll go over that when we get to the review. But since we're talking about the Righteous Gemstones today, a show that deals with televangelists, I figured, hey, let's talk about televangelists. Let's dive into the world of televangelism, and not so much all of them, but the ones that are sketchy. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of these so-called men and women of God who get on television or probably have podcasts, probably have radio shows and everything else, have these mega churches. But nothing they're doing is of God. Nothing they're doing is to spread the good news, if you will. But it is more for selfish reasons, money hustling, if you will. And before we get into all that, let me just start off by saying I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in religion, but I do believe in spirituality. I don't really rock with the denomination stuff. That's not. I don't see where that's of God. Oh, you're this type of Christian, so yeah, you get to go to heaven, but that type, no. I feel if you follow the words of Christ in the way that he lived, I think you're good. But I'm not into the all the extra stuff. That all the extra stuff you can keep. And so and that's just my thing. And with that being said, I made a point throughout the what 4 years, 3, 4 years I've been doing this show, not to be preachy and not to push my agenda. It may come off as that at sometimes, but that's not my intentions. I really do this show to give my opinion on things, not to try to convert nobody into my beliefs. And that's rather it's a film review, because I don't really speak about my spiritual beliefs here, but film reviews. If I feel a film is super good, really excellent, a masterpiece, I'm not trying to convince you that the movie's good if you feel the movie stinks. If you think the movie stinks, that's your opinion. And hey, you have valid reasons for feeling that way. Who am I to try to flip you over to my side? And vice versa. If I think a movie stinks and you think a movie is good, I mean, hey, I'm not going to try to convince you, no, you're seeing it wrong. That movie really sucks. No, that's not my goal here. And the same is true when it comes to spirituality. These are my beliefs. I'm not trying to flip nobody to nothing. You're a grown person, I assume. I don't think any little kids listen to this. But if you do, hey, I'm not vulgar or anything, so kids can listen. But at the same time, you're grown. You're grown. You can. I mean, I'm pretty sure you done heard it all at this point. depending on what age you are. But in the case that you do want to hear all that, go find somewhere you can hear it. I don't use this platform as that, and I'm an ordained minister, but I don't use this platform to preach. I when I preach at a church, and so if you want to hear it, come to the church that I go to, and you can hear it. But here we talk movies, we talk entertainment, we talk all pop culture and stuff like that. So I said all that to say that this show may upset a lot of people if you are a hardened Christian, if you are a stone cold Christian who look at shows like the Righteous Gemstones as blasphemous and stuff like that. Okay, this isn't your episode, and it's fine. You don't have to listen to it, but just be sure to come back when we do another episode. But you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to listen to it if you may find it offensive, even with some of the people, real life people we're going to discuss today. These pastors and leaders at these mega churches and these televangelists and things of that nature, who you probably listen to, who you probably follow. But what all I'm gonna go through is stuff that is facts, that are facts about their ministry, and it's hypocritical in the way they conduct themselves, and it's sickening to me. I can't stand when people use the Bible or God in general in a way to make a profit. That's not what it's there for. That's not what it's meant for. And I think that's just flat out, straight up wrong. Any church, anything, I don't care what the denomination is, it's wrong. And so that's what made me really enjoy that show, the Righteous Gemstones. I really enjoyed it because it really shined a light on how ridiculous these people are, using the Bible for their self-interest. And we're going to touch in on a few of them and then get into the review of the 4 seasons of the Righteous Gemstones. First, let's break down televangelism. If you don't know what it is, it's occasionally termed for radio evangelism or teleministry, and it denotes the utilization of media platforms, notably radio and television, for the marketing of religious messages, particularly Christianity, which is, I guess you could say, my quote unquote religion. That's my faith is in Christianity. And that's the part that is really disturbing to me, because I'm kind of linked to these people, and I don't want to be associated with these people. That's like being linked to MAGA, because there's a lot of Christians who follow this MAGA Trump trope, and that could be further from my feelings, my beliefs, and everything else. I would rather follow behind the leadership of a nutless monkey than Donald Trump. But for some strange reason, Donald Trump has become the president of Christianity, and it still baffles my mind. This dude is the furthest example of a Christian you can get. There is nothing about Donald Trump that says Christian. Absolutely nothing. He follows not one value of a Christian. Not one. But he has swindled, in some shape, form, or fashion, a great contingent of people to believe that God sent him. I've heard these words uttered, and it's so disturbing. It is so disturbing. But that's another show for another day. Well, at least some televangelists are also regular pastors or ministers on their own place of worship, often in a mega church. And a mega church is these churches that are they're in stadiums, man. It is not your little hole in the wall a church with maybe 7 or 8 pews in it, a choir stand that consists of 18 folding chairs, and it's a just a regular little church. No, mega churches are like stadiums, man. They're like event halls, concert halls, if you will, just huge, with thousands of people that come there every week to praise and worship, I guess. But the majority of their followers come from TV and radio. That's where they get a lot of notoriety. Notoriety is from those media outlets. Others do not have a conventional congregation and work primarily through television. Televangelism began as a uniquely American phenomenon, resulting from a large, deregulated media where access to television networks and cable TV is open to virtually anyone who can afford it, combined with a large Christian population that is able to provide the necessary funding. It became especially popular among evangelistic Protestant audiences, whether independent or organized around Christian denominations. However, the increased globalization of broadcasting has enabled some American televangelists to reach a wider audience through international broadcast networks, including some that are specifically Christian in nature. Some countries have a more regulated media with either general regulations on access or specific rules regarding religious broadcasting. In some countries, religious programming is typically produced by TV companies, sometimes as a regularity or public service requirement rather than private interest groups. But the thing about it was what really disturbs me about it, because this is a good thing. This could be a good thing if it was used properly, because not everybody has access to the church. Not everybody can go to church. Some people are sick, sick in their beds, can't get out, can't go to the church, can't go anywhere. But if you're deeply rooted in your spirituality, you want to go to church, you want a fellowship, you can't. So what's the next best thing? Turn on the TV. Turn on the TV and find, especially on Sundays. I don't know how it is now, because I don't too much mess with cable TV. Everything I do is do streaming now. But I know at one point on Sunday morning, almost every channel had one of these televangelists on. In the event that you couldn't make it to church, you can watch somebody on TV. And that's a good thing, because it allows access to those who want to hear preaching or teaching of the word. And so that made sense. But just like everything in this world, once a human being gets access to it, they mess it up. They mess it up. And they mess this up as well, and not everybody, and that's something I probably should have said to start it off. Not all televangelism or televangelists are bad. Some people are purely in it to do what God instructed them to do, preach and teach the word. And that's great. But if you really know, you can tell when somebody is not of God, is not doing this just to boost themselves up, if you will. And it's sad to see it on TV. There was one that I was watching. I used to watch a few years back, and I was enjoying them. Joel Osteen. And Joel Osteen, I really enjoyed listening to him. But then, as time went on, after listening to him for about a month, and I was sitting there like, man, everyone sounds the same. And everything is about prosperity. I don't ever hear nothing else. And it dawned on me. And this man is a millionaire. This man is all about prospering. This man is all about making money, and I just couldn't rock with it after that. I couldn't rock. Whenever I hear him, it just doesn't sound right. And then not too long after that, I had saw a video or an interview, I should say, of Joel Osteen, and everything he was saying was so pretentious. And I was like, oh, this dude, he didn't lost somebody. He didn't lost the loyal listener, because I was all in for about a month strong. I was telling people about him and everything. I was enjoying what he was saying. The sad part is, what he was saying wasn't wrong, but he was twisting it to his advantage, and I just can't rock with that. Can't rock with that at all. And there's some other things that he got into, which we're going to touch on when I get to the controversial part of televangelism in a couple of minutes here. But yeah, he's one that just kind of broke my heart, really. But since we're talking about the controversy and the criticisms, let's jump into the criticisms. Most televangelists frequently draw criticism from other Christian ministers, and I guess I fall in that category. For example, John MacArthur, who was a preacher, he published a number of articles back in 2009 that were highly critical of some of these televangelists. This is a quote from an article that he wrote. Someone needs to say this plainly. The faith healers and health and wealth preachers who dominate religious television are shameless frauds. Their message is not the true gospel of Jesus Christ. There is nothing spiritual or miraculous about their own stage persona. It is all a devious ruse designed to take advantage of desperate people. They are not godly ministers, but greedy imposters who corrupt the word of God for money's sake. Their love of money is glaringly obvious in what they say as well as how they live. They claim to possess great spiritual power, but in reality, they are ranked materialistics and enemies of everything holy. That is a quote from John MacArthur, who is a minister of a non-denominational church in California and has a TV program, if I'm not mistaken, himself. So there you have that. Some of these televangelists, I'm telling you, bro, and it's not just televangelists. It can be the local pastor at Yahoo Baptist Church or whatever, somewhere in your city. But they all have their issues. Number one, these are human beings. They're not God. They're not Jesus. They're human beings. It don't make sense deifying these people. They are not, descend. They didn't descend from heaven to to bring these messages. They're normal human beings like me and you. And this is coming from an ordained minister. I'm not to be deified. So I'm just a human being. That's it. And they're all just human beings. And there's nothing special about them. I believe, in my little humble beliefs, that a pastor of any congregation is the last. He's not the first. He's the last. If he's the shepherd of the flock. And if you ever seen shepherds out there in the fields, they're not in front of the flock. They're behind the flock. They're shepherding the flock on, the cattle or whatever. They're behind and making sure they all stay in line. They're not in front. They're not the center of attention. But for some strange reason, some of these so-called preachers are. And that's not how it's supposed to go. Do y'all remember the 700 Club? I remember the 700 Club coming on TV back in the day, and it used to drive me crazy because it used to always come on after I was watching something that I was into, And then all of a sudden the 700 Club would pop up. I'm like, why? Why is this coming on TV like this? After I've just finished watching something that is completely opposite to what the 700 Club represents. But one of the individuals on that show was Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson, a renowned uh, uh, minister who passed away a couple of years ago at the age of 93 years old. He's probably the first one that I saw on TV that I actually paid attention to because of the 700 Club. It popped up everywhere. You know, it was like I can't describe it, man. It was it just popped up on every channel. And you know, back in the day, we didn't have 200 channels like we do now. You know, we only had what about 12 channels or whatever. So it would always pop up. But anyway, Pat Robinson was on there, and you know, he has said some things. He has said some things that makes you scratch your head. Like what is this? Why how do you consider yourself a man of God with some of the comments that you make? Let's go through a few. Let's go through a few. Let's start with a big one here. 9/11. Y'all remember that? Tragic. One of the most tragic events that ever take place on American soil on September 11, 2001. Pat Robinson felt the need to comment on it. Now, he was interviewing Jerry Falwell, who is no wallflower himself. Who also expressed he had an opinion that the ACLU has to take a lot of the blame for what took place in New York with the Twin Towers and whatnot. You know, along with Pat Robinson, they shifted blame to them. And in addition to the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who have helped the terrorist acts on September 11 happen. And so Pat Robinson agreed with him. He concurred. He completely agreed with him. What that had to do with September 11? What does homosexuality have to do with September 11? How did they help? Did one of the people that helped out those terrorists, I should say, happen to be gay? Hey, that's a possibility, but that don't mean the whole LGBTQ community was behind them. Just like with this, not every Christian is behind all these comments, namely me. I'm not behind all this. I don't agree with nothing he said here, you know. But it's crazy. George W. Bush, who I'm not a super fan of George W. Bush as a president, but I give him this. He called Pat Robinson and Jerry Falwell out on that. You know, he felt they should apologize, and I know Falwell did apologize. Pat Robinson didn't. So I give President Bush that. But speaking of George W. Bush, Katrina, Hurricane Katrina, and this was, I want to say 2-3 weeks after Hurricane Katrina killed 1,800 people in the metropolitan area here in New Orleans. Pat Robinson implied that on a broadcast on the 700 Club that the storm was God's punishment in response to America's abortion policy. I can't make this up. I can't make this up. He suggested that the September 11 attacks and the disaster in New Orleans could be connected in some way. This is I'm telling you, this came out of his mouth. This is not, I'm not making none of this up. And as a individual who was affected by Hurricane Katrina, family members being displaced by Hurricane Katrina, and countless other people, family and friends who had to go through this tragedy or had to go through this tragedy, and some still are going through it, still fighting to get back to New Orleans, still fighting to get their lives back in order. Let me say this. I know the man is dead and gone. Good riddance. That's all. I'm just going to say that. We're going to press on. That man, who says that? Who does that? Anywho's, we move on to another one. We move on to one that's kind of close to home here, and that is none other than Jimmy Swagger. Jimmy Swagger, who my mom used to watch him, and I remember, I remember his sermons and stuff like that. And he's Pentecostal. He was a Pentecostal minister, and so growing up in a Baptist church, I saw things a little differently. But that was my first exposure to the Pentecostal denomination and how they rock. Now, it isn't like night and day from Baptist, but you know, there were subtle differences, and you know, it wasn't bad. I actually enjoyed it. It was entertaining. I'll say that much. But he was a very popular preacher, very, very popular. I know a lot of people who still to this day listen to Jimmy Swagger. But going back to 1988, and this was an event. I remember this so clearly, like it happened yesterday. It was probably one of the funniest things I ever experienced around that time of my life, because number one, I didn't 100% know exactly what was going on, you know, because I'm like, around that time I'm about 9 or 10, and I'm not really watching this stuff anyway. My mom was watching it, but I was just there, somewhat listening, somewhat, not really paying attention. And so when this all happened, I remember when the news broke that Jimmy Swagger was caught with a prostitute, you know, with a woman of the night. I remember the just the worldwide buzz around it. This was like the first time in my lifetime that I saw a scandal play out on television. Once again, this before CNN and TMZ and, you know, all of these 24-hour news outlets, and definitely before the internet and whatnot. But every station was in on it. You know, they were reporting on this scandal, because around that time, Jimmy Swagger was the bee's knees, man. I mean, that was a big congregation he had. Well, he got caught with this prostitute. And what made it hit so close to home, literally, in my house, where it happened at, was like, I don't know, it's about 2 to 3 miles away from where I grew up. You know, on Airline Highway there, and at this hotel that's still there today. And it basically all started with beef. There was a there was a rap battle in the in the churches. It was Jimmy Swaggart versus Melvin Gorman, who was another prominent preacher around the area here in New Orleans, and they were just vying for territory or whatever. Well, Swagger had accused Gorman of having several affairs, and this caused him to be deflocked, which I didn't even know was a term, but he was deflocked from his church, the Assemblies of God, which is, if you don't know what deflocked is, your script of your ordination. You know, you can no longer preach in a church. You know, you can still preach, but you can't do it in one of their churches. So he was deflocked, and so his ministry had all but ended. And so Gorman filed a lawsuit against Jimmy Swagger for defamation and conspiracy to ruin his reputation, if you will, and he won. It was a successful lawsuit, and he was rewarded damages amounting up to $10 million. He didn't get that until I think 1991. And so we move we move back a little bit. And so after all of that, right before the trial and all that stuff came and the lawsuit or whatever, there was a setup, if you will. This was a retaliation measure here. Gorman hired his son Randy and his son-in-law Garland Bilbo to watch the travel in on Airline Drive in Metairie, which is a suburb of New Orleans, about 6 miles away from New Orleans and about 3 miles away from where I grew up. And at that travel in, the two men photographed Jimmy Swaggart outside of room 7 with Debbie McGee, or Murphy, I should say, who is a local prostitute. And Gorman arrived at the travel inn a short while later, and he confronted Jimmy Swaggart face to face. He didn't just do this under the cloak of darkness. He went to his face and confronted him. Well, that led Jimmy Swaggart to come on TV in one of his televised worship services and confess. And this is the part that was the funny part about it. It is not funny, but it's funny. He was crying down in his words. It was the most quoted meme that before memes happened. I sinned. And he was just crying down, snot running out his nose and everything. And everybody somewhat forgive. Well, not everybody, because he was the flock too. And so he got kicked out of the Assemblies of God, and his congregation shrunk. And he did restart his ministry after all that, but he was, non-denominational and non-affiliated at that point. So it damaged him. But that was after he damaged another man. And so I think he moved his congregation to Baton Rouge around that time, and I think it's still there. And I think they're still on TV, if I'm not mistaken. But he is a non-denominational Pentecostal minister at this point in time of his life. But it doesn't end there. We fast forward to 1991, and yet again, Jimmy Swaggart was found in the company of the woman of the night for a second time, and he was pulled over by the police, this time in California, for driving on the wrong side of the road. And so I don't know what was going on in that car, but he was driving on the wrong side of the road. And so the police pulled him over, and with him in the vehicle was a woman. And according to the woman, Swagger had stopped to, proposition sex to her on the side of the road. He proposed to, hey, let's get it. Let's do it right here. I ain't going in a hotel. Last time I did that, I got in trouble. Let's do it in the car. And so she later told reporters, he asked me for sex. I mean, that's why he stopped me. That's what I do. I'm a prostitute, So this time, rather than confessing his sins to the congregation, Jimmy Swaggart told those at his family worship center, the Lord told me it's flat, none of your business, end quote. So he stood 10 toes down on this one. He wasn't gonna give that speech. And so he temporarily stepped down as the head of his ministry for a time of healing and counseling. And so up to this point, he hasn't been busted with anybody else. But that dude, he tripped me out, man. He tripped me out. As a matter of fact, I want to say last year I went by my mom's house and she was watching TV and Jimmy Swaggart was on. And I'm like, Mom, he's still on TV? And she was like, yeah. I still enjoy him. I like, go ahead, go on with your bass. He's still rocking it, man. Then there's Clifto Dollar. And now the man name is Dollar, so that lets you know exactly where where his head is in his name. The dude is I'll just put it like this. I think it was 2015. He asked his congregation to buy a $65 million G I think it was a G6 or whatever jet, you know, and he was serious. He was serious. He said this was a sermon of his. That if I want to believe God for a $65 million plane, you can't stop me. You can't stop me from dreaming. I'm gonna dream until Jesus comes. It followed the loss of a previous Gulfstream aircraft he owned that had left the runway, ran off the runway, if you will, and I think that was in London, and there were no injuries, but the plane was kaput. So he wanted his congregation to to flip the bill for him to get another private jet. Investigators concluded that the pilot of that plane that went off the runway had misidentified lights marking the edge of the runway, believing them to be the center line, and bada bing, bada boom. He's been in quite a number of lawsuits. You know, he's been audited by the IRS multiple times. The dude's a crook. I'll just say it like that. He's a crook. Along with him, you also have from accusers that were a part of his congregation and what. It was just a mess. It, sickening, really. It was sickening to hear all that stuff. Another clown locally here where I'm at in Louisiana, Jesse Duplantis. He's another one who has private jets and all this. His church isn't too far from where I live, and it's to pass that thing up. It is, I don't know, man. I think the thing that disturbs me about these preachers of these mega churches and stuff. Look, it's fine to have a mega church. That's fine. If you want a big old edifice for a lot of people to come and praise God, that's all fine and good. My problem with it is half, if not 75% of that congregation are struggling to keep the lights on, struggling to keep food in their refrigerator. And this preacher is standing up there, got private jets, got all these fancy cars and these tailor-made suits and all this here. Money just pouring out. They diving in it like Scrooge McDuck in a vault. But your congregation is starving. I mean, what sense that make? I just don't understand that whole structure just doesn't compute in my head. I'm sorry. It just does not compute to me. And what makes it even more disturbing is the fact that these broke people are giving their last to this church. I don't get it. I just don't get it. It's good to give. That's fine. Give. But I'm not giving all my money to this church, and this church ain't helping. And when I need help, I can't get help. No. That dog don't hunt. But the part that gets me with the private jet thing, going back to Jesse Duplantis, and Kenneth Copeland, because they both have the same stupid reason why they need a private jet. They need a jet so they can physically go to different countries and spread God's word. Those countries don't have a TV. I mean, you're on TV. Why you need to physically be there? Why you got to go there? And if you got to go there, why does it have to be on a private plane? Well, they have an answer for that. The reason they don't don't fly commercial and only use private planes because they say commercial planes are full of demons. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up, man. You honestly cannot make this stuff up. But enough of that. Enough of them clowns. Let's get into these clowns. Let's jump into our review. Our review of the HBO comedy drama, The Righteous Gemstones, which was created by Danny McBride, who also stars in this show along with Adam Devine, Etta Patterson, Walton Goggins, and John Goodman. This show depicts a family of South Carolina-based televangelists and megachurch preachers led by widowed patriarch Eli Gemstone. Eli and his immature adult children, Jesse, Judy, and Calvin, lead lives funded by the church. This show, this show automatically had my attention because of Danny McBride and his relationship with HBO and his two previous shows he had on there, Eastbound and Down, along with Vice Principals, which I loved. I love both of those shows. And so you have the same team returning here, who was behind those shows, also a part of this show. So I was in. I was in automatically. Danny McBride is one of those comedic actors that, man, anything he pops up in, I'm with it. You know, I'm down to clown, and he hasn't let me down. I mean, the dude is electrically funny. His style of humor is my style of humor. I love Danny McBride, and you know, along with starring, he also directed a few episodes throughout the series. He also wrote a few, if not the majority of them, along with his partners here. A little tidbit, little note here: the recent Halloween films that came out, you know, that trilogy that came out, that was, you know, I would say one and a half of them were good out of the three. But Danny McBride co-wrote those films. You know, the first one was excellent. First one was great. It was the law of diminishing returns after that. But Danny McBride is very talented. And this show, when they announced it, when they made it known that this was what they were going after, these televangelists, you know, telling the story of this mega church and these children who are dysfunctional at best, was like it was the stuff of legend. I'm like, man, this is gonna piss so many people off, man. And I'm here for it. I'm all here for it because they need to be poked at. They need to have that light shined on them because they're not beyond reproach, you know, and they held nothing back on this show. Absolutely nothing. 4 seasons. And I would say the first 2 were great. The final 2 were all right. It was the tale of two halves here. You know, I died laughing that first season. I thought it was some of the funniest stuff that you're ever going to see in a show that is based around this this material. You know, in the first season, Eli, who's played by John Goodman, and that was another thing that kind of brought me on board, was John Goodman, because I wanted to see him in kind of a different, kind of a screwball-y type of role, but he wasn't. He was the straight man on this show, you know, as the father of these 3 misfits. It was hilarious to see John Goodman play off of these 3 hilarious actors, and John Goodman is hilarious in his own right, but that wasn't his role here. But in the first season, we meet baby baby Billy Freeman, who is played by Walton Goggins, who is the unsung hero of this show. I had problems, you know, give or take, throughout these 4 seasons with every actor here, or every character, not the actor, but the character. Either it was undeveloped in season 3, or they peaked in season 2, or season 4 they disappeared, or whatever. I have my little gripes with these characters throughout the season, but the one that stayed consistent, that stayed true from season 1 all the way to season 4, was Walton Goggins, was baby baby Billy. I love that. He was hilarious. Every scene he was in was funny. Every one, even the ones that was meant to be serious, was funny. The dude is amazing. I love Walton Goggins. Walton Goggins is the most slept on actor I think in Hollywood. I don't think he gets his proper due. The dude plays anything. I've seen him in dramas. I've seen him in Quentin Tarantino films. The Hateful Eight, Django Unchained, and stuff like that. I've seen him on Justified as this villain, as this just coincidentally enough, old snake oil preacher. On that show, he was just the most scum of scums there. But he made a turn on that show. But he was amazing on that. I've seen him in it was recently Fallout. He was good on Fallout. That show. The White Lotus, just a couple of months ago, the new season that just passed. He was on that. Really good. So he can play anything. And Vice Principals, man. Vice Principals, he stole that show. That was his show. He stole it. And it's no wonder that him and Danny McBride reteamed before this show. They play well off of each other. But Walton Goggins was the hero of this entire run here for the Righteous Gemstones. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. That first season, it got you hooked because it got you into the characters. You got introduced. You see where everybody stood. You saw where the church was and what the church was battling against, and so on and so forth. And you got a good idea of how this show could play out. So it really did a good job of hooking you in. Season 2, it wasn't as good as the first season, but it was good. It was still funny. It was still gemstones. You got Danny McBride and his wife trying to branch off, if you will, from the Gemstone Church and do their own little thing and try to get a timeshare resort, a Christian timeshare resort, if you will. And the family, they're facing this investigation from this journalist who's an old friend of Eli's from his past, and this mysterious kind of biker assassin. It was all out of left field type stuff, but it fit the show. All that popped up in season 2. Season 2, it was good, but it wasn't as good as the first season. It had its moments in season 2. Season 3 is where it kind of started to slow momentum. Season 3, you had Eli, John Goodman's character. He kind of started falling back a little bit, semi-retiring from the church, and allowing the children to have more of a leadership role at the church. And you got this dynamic between those three trying to be the leader instead of them coming together and leading as one, if you will. And you had that going on, that little civil and rivalry there. You had a Christian militia that was thrown in here for good measure, who had a grudge against the Gemstones, and you had Judy, who was involved in this kind of a affair, but not an affair. It was a weird thing, but anywho's it was funny. It was good, but once again, just every season went down a notch, just a notch. It wasn't like flat, but it kept going down, and I think it was more of the story beats that started to kind of go each and every way, and it wasn't streamlined, if you will. But season 3 was fine. You know, it was funny. It had its moments. It actually had some great moments, but it wasn't as many as the first 2 seasons. The fourth and final season that just wrapped up this past week here on HBO. Ah, I was really disappointed. I'm gonna be frank and honest with you. It was disappointing. It had moments, and I mean little bitty moments, and it felt rushed. It felt rushed. It felt like they had to, or they were trying to wrap it up. You know, by any means necessary. It wasn't dealt with love. You didn't really get too many side characters as you did in the previous 3 seasons. You know, we got introduced to an old family friend of theirs who was the best friend of Amy Lee, who was the mother of the kids and the wife of Eli. And she comes into the picture and begins a relationship with Eli. The kids don't like it and they're trying to break it up. And there's this other little plot where her ex-husband is trying to ruin her life and all this other stuff, and it's causing a strain on Eli's relationship with her. And you know, the kid, it wasn't, you didn't get much of the church. And that's where I'm kind of, I just didn't like the end. You know, this final season, the church had nothing to do with this season. And this isn't me trying to be a Christian thing. This was just, that's a major part of their story. And it disappeared in its fourth and final season. It didn't play a major role as it did in the previous 3 seasons, and you felt the absence of it. But overall, it wrapped up, I guess you could say, with a happy ending for everybody. Still, it was kind of anticlimactic for me, but you know, they wrapped it up. It wasn't open ended. It pretty much wrapped up every storyline that they had going forward. So I do appreciate it for that. But ultimately, it just didn't end in a super satisfying way for me. The Righteous Gemstones, all 4 seasons, gets a letter grade of a B minus. It is a good show. It is a funny show, and it's offensive. It is super offensive. If you are a pearls clutching Christian, do not watch this show. It is not, it is not going to it's not going to make you happy. Is but if you are a realist, or if you are somebody who like myself, don't take things that serious, hey, this is the show for you. It's whether you're a Christian or not. I mean, come on, man. It's not like it's you. Only way you get offended if any of these characters represent you. That's the only thing that would offend you. But otherwise, it's sheer entertainment. And in the Christian way, I think there was a scene at the end of the season, at the end of this show, that kind of, it kind of made me proud. You know, as vulgar and ridiculous as this show is, as a Christian, I was kind of proud of one of the final scenes in this show that made me feel like, oh, okay, it was something. Got something out of it, spiritually. But everything else, it was for gut busting laughter. But that's the show today, everybody. Televangelists and the review of the Righteous Gemstones complete season, 4 seasons, I should say. But I would like to hear from you all. Do you sit down and still watch what's that channel? TBN? Is that the station for all the Christian televangelists and 700 Club and all that good stuff? I don't know. Like I said, I got rid of cable. I cut the cord. I got rid of cable years ago, and I just operate off of streaming. I couldn't do the prices with cable. But do you still watch all of that? Maybe there's an app. Maybe there's a streaming service for that too. They got it for everything else. Do you watch all that good stuff still to this day? If you do, that's fine. To each their own. I would love to know your thoughts and your thoughts of the Righteous Gemstones if you watched that. I doubt it. But it was a good show. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. I would love to hear from you all. kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also on social media, you can look up the KB Radio Network on all social media platforms. Don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this episode as we dove into televangelism. I don't know why I couldn't, this whole show, I could not get it out on the first try. Televangelism. I did it. And the review of the complete series, The Righteous Gemstones. I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.